Compact SUVs are some of the most popular vehicles in the luxury class, and here are two of the newest: the 2025 Audi Q5 and the BMW X3. Both were just redesigned this year, and knowing how important these vehicles are, the pressure was definitely on the car makers to get it right. We're here to figure out if they did, and if one has an advantage over the other. Before we can get into this comparison, do us a favor, hit those like and subscribe buttons below to get all of our latest content. From the outside, it'd be easy to mistake the new Audi Q5 for the last generation. It didn't really move the needle much in terms of styling, and considering how well received its predecessor was, that's not a bad thing. There's nothing that stands out in a bad way, and most of the changes are subtle. The grille gets a little narrower, and the headlights have been thinned out up front. Down the side, this top crease has been blended into the body just a bit more. And around back, the big change is the single taillight bar that spans the width of the hatch. Overall, I think it's as agreeable as the last Q5 without being boring. By contrast, this new 4th generation BMW X3 gets a complete makeover. It has a more modern look with a faceted motif that permeates the entire vehicle. The grille is larger and more angular, but thankfully not as huge as some of the more controversially designed BMWs. These deep bevels and the bodywork, along with the boxier shape, give this X3 a more futuristic cyberpunk feel. And I like it way more than some of the more recent redesigns. That boxiness is more evident from the side view, with a more upright and flat front and rear. Around back, the faceting continues with these twin taillights and concave shapes in the hatch and just below it. I'm drawn to the BMW X3 styling more than the Q5's, but looks are subjective, so what do you think? Which one might get you in the dealership quicker? Let us know in the comments below. The Audi Q5 is powered by a 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder that's good for 268 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. A 7-speed dual-clutch transmission sends power to all 4 wheels, which should help it to get to 60 miles an hour in 5.8 seconds. The BMW X3 also gets a turbo 4-cylinder, but it makes just a little less horsepower at 255 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. It gets an 8-speed automatic, and like the Q5, all-wheel drive is standard. By BMW's estimate, this X3 in the base 30 xDrive trim will get to 60 miles an hour in 6 seconds. There's also an M50 xDrive model with a turbocharged 6-cylinder that's good for 393 horsepower, and that's a direct competitor to the Audi S Q5. So far, the Audi Q5 has the slightest of advantages, but as close as these specs are, it's best to sort out the differences behind the wheel, so let's go for a spin. With the specs being mostly equal, it really comes down to how they're executed. And here in the Q5, well, at least off the line, it's not quite as smooth, or at least consistently as smooth as the X3 because of this dual clutch transmission. That said, this is one of the better dual clutch transmissions, which sometimes suffer with some weird lurches or odd pregnant pauses before you get moving. The ride quality of this Q5 is oddly firm. I usually don't expect it to be this firm unless you have a sports suspension, which this does not have. This has the adaptive air suspension, which generally should be smoother and more comfortable. I'm kind of attributing that ride quality to the large 20-inch wheels, so if comfort is a priority for you, I'd say stick with smaller wheels if you have the choice. Acceleration is more than enough than most drivers will ever need, but it's not really that sporty either. It does the job, no doubt. It gets on the highway with no effort, but it doesn't really inspire me to drive it with any kind of aggression or sporty intent. And that's fine. Not everybody wants a sports car. At least on this road, I'm getting a little bit of road noise, but I think if I turned on the radio, it'd probably just drown it all out easily. From the driver's seat, visibility is pretty decent. This roof pillar here is a little thicker than I'd prefer, but I don't have to bob too much back and forth to see through sharp left turns. The view out the back is about what you expect for a compact SUV. You can still see all the cars behind you, and the side mirrors are big enough so that you have good situational awareness of everything that's going on around you. Overall, this Q5 is just easy to drive. There's not a whole lot of effort either in the steering wheel or in the brake pedal, so it's one of those that might be better on a long distance drive. But let's see how this stacks up against the X3. Now, even though the specs are pretty much the same between this X3 and the Q5, this BMW drives quite a bit differently. Now, right off the line, it's a little more responsive, which in turn makes it feel more powerful. And when it comes to sportiness, well, that's especially true when it comes to handling. I have a lot more fun driving this X3 on this curvy road than I did in the Q5. A lot more, actually. The brakes are a little firmer in the pedal, which allows me to just kind of trail it off. It feels a little more like, I guess, a BMW coupe or sedan. The steering is also just a little heavier, which gives you the impression of a stronger connection to the road. But just overall, this is more engaging, and it encourages me to drive with a little more aggression and a little more sportiness. It's definitely way more fun. And when it comes to ride quality, it's actually about the same. Now, this is riding on 21-inch wheels, and this also has the M Sport suspension. So I expected it to be just a little harsher than this, and it's really not. There's a little more jostling side to side and up and down when you hit some of the undulations in the road, but it's really not all that noticeable unless you're doing a drive back to back. Road noise in this X3 is a little more prevalent than the Q5. I'm hearing also a little more of that dull thud whenever you go over a bump. But again, just like the Q5, turn up the radio and it's no longer a problem. The view off the back is about the same as the Q5. The mirrors are just slightly smaller, but at the same time, it's not really a problem unless you're driving these back to back again. At least from the driver's seat, I don't see a clear-cut winner one way or the other. But personally, I like the X3 a little more just because I tend to favor a little more performance and athleticism from almost any car. That said, the Q5 has its own merits as well, especially when it comes to ease of driving. Well, now we've gotten all this driving out of the way, let's pull over and talk about the interiors. Now, this Q5 happens to be the top prestige trim, and for that, you get this huge panoramic sunroof, a Bang & Olufsen premium audio system, dynamic interior lighting, which kind of gives you warnings, but also little turn signal flashes in this little light bar right here, a head-up display, a heated steering wheel, heated rear seats, a 10.9-inch passenger touchscreen, which we'll go over in a bit, a surround view camera, and ventilated sports seats up front. I really like the overall design of this interior, especially with this warm and inviting trim here. A lot of car makers are switching to synthetic leather, but this Q5 actually comes standard with real leather even in its base trim. I happen to like it because it feels just a little more sturdy and breathes a little better in warm weather. On the steering wheel here we have some capacitive touch buttons, and I'm generally not a fan of these, but Audi seems to have done this a little better than some others. You have to give these buttons a little more of a push to activate something, which eliminates those unintentional button pushes. One of the most prominent features is this really large curved glass enclosure for both the instrument panel and the infotainment touchscreen. I think it's pretty impactful, and it doesn't look as tacked on as some others. Now, also on the side here, we have this passenger display that comes with the Prestige trim, and I've always sort of wondered if it was really useful or not, but if you're on a road trip, your passenger can play DJ or help with navigation. And if they're bored, they can watch streaming video or play some games. And the best part is, as a driver, I won't be distracted by it because it's completely blacked out from my perspective. Now, overall, I feel like this interior has almost a Volvo feel to it, and that's partially because of the wood trim and the kind of light leather upholstery. But it's very different from the BMW, so let's hop over there and check that out. Like the Q5, this X3 is really well equipped. This one has the premium package, which adds a panoramic sunroof, heated steering wheel, interior camera for selfies or security, a head-up display, and a semi-automated parking system. This vehicle also has the M Sport package, which spices things up with a different steering wheel, as well as some kind of M Division styling cues. Now, unlike the Q5, this has one of those sort of tacked on looking infotainment and instrument panel displays. I don't really mind it that much, at least not as much as some of the older BMWs, because it's a little more inset into the dash. That said, I think the Audi does it with a little more grace and a little more style. There are a lot of hard plastics, but they're not in any area where you're commonly going to come in contact with. All your touch points are nicely padded. When it comes to the infotainment system, I've had some issues with the newest system from BMW, mostly because almost everything is packed in there and it's not quite as intuitive as it should be. I do like they have this Q-Lock 2 licensed clock here. It's actually this fun little design that I've always liked. I actually liked it enough that I bought one of their watches. Now, one area where the BMW does have an advantage is with this dial controller, which is sort of a throwback to their old iDrive. Now, it's a little less distracting to use instead of the touch screen here, because you can just move the hotspot button around on the screen while keeping your eyes mostly on the road. Unlike the Q5, this also has a wireless charging pad, but I think it gets a slight advantage for having a second little pad, but not a charging pad right next to it for your passenger. Now here in the back seat of the Q5, I've got a good amount of space here. I've got decent room in front of my knees and plenty of space underneath the front seat for my feet. As for headroom, I have maybe an inch or two before I start brushing the headliner, and overall, it's just a nice, comfy area. The seats do recline a little bit back and forth here, not by much, but just enough to make it slightly more enjoyable on a long road trip. As I mentioned earlier, this is the Prestige trim, which comes with these sunshades here, as well as heated outboard rear seats. Here in the center, I have an armrest that's nicely padded with some decently sized cup holders as well. Here in the center console, we also have 2 USB charge ports and your own air vents. According to the specs, the Q5 has 2 inches more in legroom than this X3, and I don't quite believe that because, at least in the real world, I think I have way more knee space and just as much space underneath the front seat for my feet. The specs also say that I should have an extra ½ inch or so of headroom, but I really think they're comparable. The materials quality back here isn't nearly as nice as the Q5 though. You do still have this harder plastic stuff up top, but at least here in the door handle, there's some sharp plastic edges that kind of take you out of that luxury fantasy. With that big option package, you also get these little brackets here that can be used for approved BMW accessories. One could be either a coat hanger or an iPad holder for your rear passengers. Now here in the center console, we do have air vents, but we don't have the controls that the Q5 did. But we do at least have 2 USB-C charge ports. Over here in the center, we have a center armrest that's also well padded with about the same size cup holders as the Q5. The Q5 gains another advantage because these seats don't recline, but they are reclined enough where I don't think you'd really miss it that much. The Q5 also gains another point because it has those rear sunshades that the BMW lacks. That can be especially helpful if you're regularly transporting kids or passengers. Behind the rear seats, you have 27.6 cubic feet of cargo space, but that figure's a little misleading because I think it's actually a lot bigger when you consider this giant bin underneath. I mean, you can store a ton of stuff under there. Helping matters is a hands-free powered liftgate, as well as remote seat back releases here. There's also, in this top trim with the air suspension, this height adjustable load floor, but it takes a while for it to activate. On paper, this BMW X3 has a little more cargo capacity at 31.5 cubic feet, but looking at it, I actually think it's a little smaller. There's also no huge bin underneath the floor. It's taken up by the spare tire, but honestly, I think the Q5 has an advantage when it comes to hauling and cargo. Another area where the X3 comes up a little short is lack of those remote seat back releases. Instead, you kind of have to reach in to grab this little latch here and push forward. At least the X3 does have these handy hooks here for your grocery bags so that when you take a turn, you won't dump all their contents. Like the Q5, this X3 also comes with a hands-free power liftgate. The Audi Q5 has a starting price of just over $53,000, but as tested, climbs to over $63,000. It's rated at 25 mpg combined, which should cost you about $2,500 a year in fuel costs according to the EPA. The BMW X3 has a starting price of just over $51,000, and as tested, it climbs to just over $60,000. It's rated at 29 mpg combined, which should cost you about $2,150, saving you about $350 in fuel savings per year according to the EPA. Both have the same 4-year, 50,000-mile warranty, but BMW sweetens the ownership experience with 3 years of complimentary scheduled maintenance. Now, all things considered, they are very, very similar, and there's not a bad choice between them. But personally, I prefer the X3 a little more thanks to its higher performance and playful, sporty nature. But what would you do? Would you go for the more warm and inviting Q5, or would you opt for the sportier and more playful BMW X3? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons below to get all of our latest content. And we'll see you in the next review.